Hearth and home. It's a comforting concept that many Minnesotans enjoy. However, for some, housing is a source of worry or frustration. Recently, U.S. Representative Tim Walz convened a housing summit to discuss the challenges and brainstorm solutions to housing issues in our region. We feature excerpts from this summit, coming up next on Cue Insight.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for making the trip here to beautiful Austin on what probably is the nicest day of the year so far. I'm grateful for that. I also know it's probably fair to say there is not a busier room in all of Minnesota, the folks that are in here, ranging from mayors to commissioners to folks that have a lot of things to try and get done. Your presence here is a testament to your commitment to our vibrant communities. It's an understanding, and I want to be very clear, the issue of workforce housing. I understand that there are folks in this room have been working on this issue for decades. This is nothing new for many of you, and I also think many of us know one of the reasons this so is pronounced right now is because of the great work of many of you in this room in our communities in southern Minnesota. We have a very vibrant and strong economy that is creating a lot of jobs, and we are above full employment. So I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner. She's going to introduce her panel. We're going to do some moderated questions, and then each of you are going to add in on this with some questions and answers. And again, I think the goal is for us to try and see what's working, for us to decide if there's things that we can take to your communities, to each of our communities, to build strength in the regional area, and then to see if there's things that I need to do to build that coalition to get it done. So Commissioner, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for being with us.
We're really fortunate at Minnesota Housing that over the last 5 years we've received state appropriations for workforce housing, but they can only go so far. We typically get 3 to 4 times as many applications as we are able to fund for workforce housing, and there are several of you in the room who were disappointed last year because your projects weren't funded. We had $17 million in requests last year of good, solid projects that we were not able to get to. So with $2 million that we put out for workforce housing with a new appropriation from the legislature, we had a lot of demand. We will have dollars on the table this year out of our challenge fund for workforce housing again, and I know that many of you are planning to resubmit your applications again this year. And I'm going to throw out to the panel, it'll be a jump ball here. What are the biggest challenges when trying to expand the amount of workforce housing in any given community?
Well, I'd be welcome to start out with that. And in Albert Lea, we've really had a difficult time attracting developers to build the needs of our workforce housing. A lot of it comes down to something that was mentioned previously, just with the elevation of construction costs getting higher and higher each year, but incomes in our local communities have been remaining somewhat stagnant. We've got probably over 200 jobs within a 5-mile radius of Albert Lea open, and we can't find housing to fill a lot of those jobs. We've had businesses that have had provided testimonials that they've had individuals turn down jobs because they've scanned the community and can't find something that's of affordable or good quality, particularly for market rate rental housing in our community. We've got a lot of professionals, teachers, and such are looking for a nice place to reside, rent, maybe for a year before they fully commit to the community, and just are not finding that. And we've worked with a couple developers to try to attract, after completing a very formal housing study, to identify to not only the general public but to the development world what our true needs are and just simply have not been able to fill the funding gap through a formal financial pro forma. And just some examples of that, we've had a developer that proposed 18 units and another developer 24 units respectively, and their funding gaps are anywhere between $400,000 and $800,000 to make their minimum profit that they need to make for those rental housing. And even when the city or other agencies step in with some local subsidies.
The other piece that I would say that we've really seen is that a mismatch between where we have the existing affordable stock and the physical asset and where we've got the development occurring. So when we were in Albert Lea, maybe it was a year or so ago for one of our regional housing dialogues, we were looking at the vacancy rates in the area. So the projects in Albert Lea are full, right? Like there's no vacancy. And then, for example, for rural development, we've got projects in communities that are maybe 10 or 15 miles, and we've got all kinds of vacancies in them. And so that's hard because sometimes people want to be right in town, but are there ways regionally to work on some of these issues to address where we have existing stock and making that attractive and desirable and a more regional solution? Because again, if it is so hard to get new done, then we have to really look at every possible way that we can to utilize the existing stock. So just a couple thoughts there.
The last thing I'll say is really it's just a numbers game. The way that housing gets financed, as most of you know, it's real estate. The banks play a really important role in lending. You want, as much of your project covered by a loan as you can. But as Mary was saying from the outset, some communities have not had development in recent years, and so the banks don't, they go out and do appraisals of what does the housing stock look like, how much rent can we get on these projects, what kind of a loan can I give to this project. And if their comparables are older buildings that aren't demanding as much rent, they're not going to be as comfortable putting as much debt on the project that you as a city or a developer think that this project will generate.
What does it really mean to a community when they don't have enough housing? What does it mean economically? What are some of the challenges that communities face when that's the issue that's facing them?
Well, I think in particular we've heard testimonials from a lot of businesses that just haven't been able to expand as they've wanted to.
Why aren't people putting money into existing houses and existing apartment buildings, or are they?
I think one of the real challenges is that there are many resources out there for rehabbing, especially single-family housing or purchase of single-family housing, but it's very difficult for your average person to kind of figure out where to start. And so sort of the importance of the either knowledgeable advocate, trusted advisor, that entity in the community that understands where all the various resources are and how to help either individuals or the community put them together. I can't kind of understate the importance of that.
There's a researcher at the University of Minnesota who has studied this issue of our seniors aging out of their single-family homes, and the idea being that seniors will soon age out of their homes, and that will open up a lot of opportunity for people to move into those very same homes. So really, we just need to wait a little while, and then the housing solution will be fixed because seniors will move out and people will move in. And I think it is compelling, and it's an interesting thing, but I think that to me, it highlights a mismatch. Builders and sort of professional rehabbers rehab homes to the market right now. And what we have seen, anecdotally too, is that the housing stock that many seniors are leaving behind is not necessarily the housing stock that young families or employers want. It maybe doesn't have all the amenities. It maybe doesn't have enough bedroom sizes for some of the larger immigrant populations who are coming down. So having a very proactive city and developers who are really looking at what is the wave of people coming and how do we change the way we rehab this single-family housing stock to maybe plan in advance for that wave is a really important thing, because we have seen people come in and rehab and just assume that these homes will get filled, but they don't necessarily meet the desires or the size of what housing needs to be. So I just throw that out as both a challenge and sort of an interesting, stimulating idea for the future.
How willing have employers been to come to the table? I mean, Chad, you've made a pretty compelling argument that economically the shortage of housing is compelling. Has it compelled employers to get involved?
I think one specific example, and we also applied for the grants before a deed here a couple weeks ago and just came up a little short. But we had a lot of employers who were willing to write letters of support for this, and Mrs. Jerry's and one of the owners of Mrs. Jerry's, or those who founded Mrs. Jerry's, see this as a critical issue in the community as well. And they were actually a very large component of the success in partnering with the city. We had an area in the community where we had some vacant lots that had all the infrastructure basically right there, and the city and the school and the county, which might sound a little bit odd, all came together to create tax abatement for this project. But really the component that kind of pushed it over the edge was the landowner who owns Mrs. Jerry's and Wedgewood Cove, reduced the lot cost to be able to fill that financial gap. So without that component, without that private partnership, that project would not have moved forward.
The range of employer involvement can be so broad. It can be everything from writing letters to, you're describing there, with a lot size, to down payment assistance, and you can have that conversation with your local employers to say, what are the ways in which you think you could participate? And then you go from there, right? So maybe it's that you're having sessions at the employer where folks can come in. Jenny can have her financial literacy and counseling folks come in and talk to their employees about what the resources are. Maybe they're willing to do a down payment assistance program for their employees that will recycle back to a pool. It is such a broad range of options that are available.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Congressman for instructions about what comes next. Could you give a round of applause to our great panel?
If you don't get to the heart of what the real problem is, and you saw this, the complexity, and we'll get into this a little more, this is a transportation issue. This is access to broadband issue. This is some cultural issues. This is much broader than just saying build it and they will come, and I think that's a key point. So at this time, I'm going to have Margaret come up here. She's going to explain what's going on next, and we're going to engage all of you, and at the end of that time, we'll be reporting back, and then we're going to have some lunch. So Margaret, thank you. Take me through a successful project. How did it start from who brought that there was a need for this? How did the conversation go? How did it get into the planning, development, building, and occupying stage? And then where does it set today?
In 2004, Worthington had a affordable or a workforce housing need that hovered right around 75. Today, that's about 500 units, various different levels. At that time in 2004, there wasn't the appetite for the local unit of government to take on a very active role in pursuing affordable housing. What we were able to accomplish was to make some changes as to the in the areas of regulatory as well as education. From 2004 to the point of recession, we were able to adopt a rental housing ordinance, which set the standard of living for safety and welfare for those individual tenants. That was the primary purpose, but the secondary benefit of that, it started raising the median rents, which was one of the things that we heard back from the development community, is that the rents to be collected were so low that you couldn't do new construction. Education, Worthington has one of the more diverse communities in greater Minnesota, and with that we had the challenge of trying to educate the immigrant populations as to how to live. I believe in the earlier session, they talked about changing furnace filters, things like that, trying to make sure that the housing quality, or the quality of the existing housing stock was maintained. Since 2004 to up till our current Small Cities Grant, we have invested over $4 million worth of owner and rental housing rehab. With that, since 2008, as I indicated, we've seen our housing needs continue to increase, and we have an elected body that is committed to trying to play a more vocal and financial role. Since 2008, we established the Worthington Rediscovered program, which is intended to remove blighted property and offer it up to developers for new single-family construction. We have also invested some hospital proceeds as we sold the hospital in 2008. And Rick will probably go into a little bit more detail in regards to the project itself, but Rising Sun Estate is a collaboration with the housing and regional, or the HRA, local HRA, the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership, and the local unit of government that brought 48 units to the market just last year. And then the last program that we brought to the table is Noble's Home Initiative. That is a tax abatement program that was bought into by our school districts, our county government, and our local units of government, which in its first year doubled the number of homes that were constructed in the county over 2014. Went from 11 that were constructed county-wide to 21 just this past year, first year of the program. And then just recently, we just acknowledged or gave recognition to the startup of a Housing Challenge program. As it was indicated earlier this morning, having everybody at the table, and the business community is an important factor to that. The business community has stepped up, and particularly JBS, who challenged out to all of our local employers to put money into a fund that would be housed in our nonprofit economic development arm in Worthington, that would be used to the discretion of their board. May that be in an equity position for new construction or into a deferred loan.
The latest project that was referenced is Rising Sun, and in that particular project, the HRA, Housing Redevelopment Authority, issued tax-exempt bond or taxable bonds, and across since about the mid-1900s, many economic development authorities in southwestern Minnesota and south central Minnesota have issued bonds as a way of building housing. Up until about 2000, we could do this without subsidy, and the cost of development worked as it related to the tax-exempt process. We'd issue tax-exempt bonds, and between payment in lieu of taxes and the tax-exempt status and privately placing these with local lenders, the project would work. Since about 2000, we've had to bring subsidy in. So with the case of Rising Sun, a consortium of local lenders issued bonds, and the bonds are really based, going back to this whole market dynamic of what are the prevailing rents. So the prevailing rents right now on a two-bedroom unit in Worthington are $680. It took us a while to get them up to $680. They're about $440 around 2000. The whole idea of doing this project was really to increase the rents and to really build our own comps for the city of Worthington. And what that really took was having the HRA issue the bonds. The housing partnership acted as the developer. We did the loan processing, did the financing. The city and utility commission put $1.6 million in as a 0% interest loan. Southwest Initiative Foundation put $200,000 in. This is for a 48-unit development. The differential between what the banks would lend based on the $680 rents and what the total development cost was meant that we had to come up with $2.6 million in subsidy to make the project work, and this was bringing the rents up by $200 a month. So we essentially moved the two-bedroom units up from $680 to $880 a month, roughly. That $2.6 million was funded by the city, by the housing, the Southwest Initiative Foundation. JBS put funds in, we put funds in. We also had land banked some land, acquired some land 10 years ago and sold that at cost, which was about $75,000 for a 5-acre lot. The actual appraised value was $245,000. We used our general construction company. So what I'm getting down to is it took all of us to come together and all of us to make this thing work. I don't believe it's sustainable at that level, but it was a way of generating the rents up, and hopefully that we can start correcting the market.
So I think maybe turn it out to folks out here if you've got some questions. The observation I get from listening to them is that market forces are amazing things, and it seems to me that the market forces and with employers being at an anchor of this, that this may be a new opportunity for folks to see how critical this is. If you get that, we're collaborators in this, we're partners in this. Maybe at no time over the last 20 years or so has the need been so great amongst HR people. As I said, that's what brought this conversation to the forefront. So there may be a new desire to engage those folks, as you said there was. So maybe just I think maybe leave it open if thoughts. We've got a little bit of time here as we go. I'm just going to let some folks go. And
Brad said necessity. I really think it's more desperation. $2.6 million there, and things that we're looking at here in Austin. It's a heavy load for a community when Austin has a 20% poverty rate. When we're asking our elected officials to put these kind of resources on the table to address it, I think desperation is not an overly strong word, and appreciate your focus on the details, because they do matter.
We talked a lot at our table about talking to the people that who we're trying to house. So my question to all the panelists would be, do you have any examples of things that we could do to get together to actually determine what the need is so we can fill that need?
Sure. When we start working with the community, it's really talking about what kind of planning process. So we generally will talk to the city council and ask them to get behind it, and then start setting up the platform, and then appointing people to that. And then we try to broaden the conversation. Where we really have, succeed pretty easily with stakeholders. But when you start having this conversation about potential residents, it gets much more difficult. So we generally would want to talk about two things. One, to finance or fund a comprehensive housing study. Many communities do that. And then from there, take that document and have a facilitated discussion about what that study is telling you, what the markets are, and then in the broader context of stakeholders that have interest in transportation corridors, things like that, really broaden the discussion. As I said earlier, this is really an economic development discussion. This is really what it is.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences that might exist in the challenges in developing the single family, new construction, new ownership opportunities versus multifamily?
great question. That's why I'll let the panel take this one.
Cost.
I should let Rick, the developer, talk about this more, but a couple of things, and we're doing some more work on the single-family costs of construction. You know, it now, I think at our roundtable in Austin, $195,000 to create, you know, a modest single-family home when you consider, you know, the land and whatnot, and that's a starting point. You know, someone needs to make $60,000 to afford that home, and that's just on the, you know, bare minimum, straightforward housing design for new construction.
On the other side of it is the mortgage products it's more difficult to qualify. Some of our communities have moved out from using 502 USDA rural development, 502 direct, which we relied on very heavily. We're concerned that St. Peter may be bumped out. Heard that Austin already has been. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge issue as well.
We view this as an issue in our communities. It's been articulated to me. This is not one of those issues that comes and goes. It needs to be solved. It has to have a solution. If it is not solved, we're going to hit caps. We're going to have a stagnant economic growth, and that is going to impact our quality of life. This issue is on the forefront, and let's solve it. So thank you all, and drive safely.
The crux of the housing issue in Owatonna is really along the spectrum. There are not enough houses on the market for sale for single family, early career, or further into the career. And there are not enough rental apartments available or homes for people who want to live in the community. So as a result, we find people commuting in from lower cost communities.
Fact of the matter is, we heard from a lot of our speakers that economic development and the economic health of southern Minnesota is really dependent on having places for people to live. So we talked a lot about solutions, and I think we gave people a lot of ideas to take back home to their communities.
I think the most interesting thing today for me, number one, was to see the size of the crowd here, but a take-home. Disrupt the market. And we need to really do that here in this community. We need to disrupt what has been going on, especially for the last decade, and help people understand we have a great need and we need to find those that want to fulfill that need.
This really builds on the mayor's ad hoc committee he put together on housing. Taking it the next step, I think they recognize that we're putting some concerted effort for it, so it seemed like a natural next step to have the Congressman hold the Housing Summit here in Austin, and we were grateful that he did that and brought some more attention to the issue so we can solve these problems.
You can find more information about housing in Minnesota at mnhousing.gov. Thanks for joining KSMQ Public Television for another edition of On Cue Insight.